One company built a piston fighter that could loiter over a battlefield for hours. It also built a delta wing interceptor that reached 50,000 feet in 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Douglas did not just build fighters. They built 7 radically different answers to 7 questions the Navy could not afford to get wrong. Some became legends. Others vanished before most pilots ever learned their names. What separated them? A Skyraider pilot once said that you could fly until your legs cramped and still have enough gas to bring everyone home. That was not bravado. It was the reality of endurance when flying the A1 Skyraider over hostile territory, hour after hour, when every minute could mean the difference between life and death for someone on the ground. During a rescue mission in April 1970, Lieutenant Ronald Johnson circled his Skyraider above North Vietnam for nearly 6 hours, guarding a vulnerable helicopter and its crew. He had no idea if the enemy would break cover or if the weather would close in, but he stayed on station, burning fuel at a rate that would have grounded any jet after just 90 minutes. The Skyraider's Wright R3350 engine drank about 115 to 180 gallons per hour at loiter power, yet the tank held 1,340 gallons, enough for 7, sometimes even 9 hours in the air. That kind of endurance was not just a technical feat, it was a lifeline. In Korea and Vietnam, downed pilots and wounded soldiers counted on the Skyraider's slow, stubborn presence. Its 14 hardpoints could carry everything from napalm to smoke markers, but its greatest weapon was time. How many other planes could circle a rescue, lay down covering fire, and still have fuel to spare? The Skyraider traded speed for stamina, and in doing so, saved lives that might otherwise have been lost. What would you choose? A flash of jet power or the steady heartbeat of a piston engine that simply refused to leave the fight? When the Douglas A3 Sky Warrior first rolled onto a carrier deck, even the most seasoned deck crew had to pause. Here was a jet so massive, nearly 80,000 pounds at recovery, that it seemed to defy the very limits of naval aviation. The whale, as sailors called it, wasn't just another airplane. It was the Navy's answer to a Cold War riddle. How do you put true nuclear reach on a floating airfield? With a wingspan of almost 76 feet and a fuselage packed with 2,300 gallons of jet fuel, the A3 could fly 5,000 kilometers without refueling. That meant a carrier in the Pacific could threaten inland targets deep in Asia, all without ever relying on foreign bases. But size came at a price. On deck, moving the whale was a ballet of hand signals, sweat, and nerves. One deck chief recalled, "You didn't just park an A3, you negotiated with it." The aircraft's bulk crowded elevators, slowed deck cycles, and demanded reinforced arresting gear. Every landing was a test. Too heavy, too fast, and the gear could snap. Too slow, and the whale might never clear the wires. Yet, for all the challenges, its presence sent a message. The Sky Warrior gave the carrier fleet a new kind of power, strategic reach, not just tactical punch. What would it feel like to stand under that shadow, guiding 40 tons of jet and bomb across a pitching steel deck? Would you trust your ship's future to one airplane's landing weight? For nearly 3 decades, the Navy did. The whale set the upper bound for what a carrier could handle, and every jet that followed had to reckon with the limits it revealed. If the A3 was a gamble, it paid off, not just in missions flown, but in the very idea of what a carrier could project across the world's oceans. Ed Heinemann, Douglas' chief designer, once handed his team a challenge: build a carrier attack jet so compact it could fit on a 22-foot elevator, weigh less than 10,000 pounds loaded, and still outfight anything in its class. The result was the A4 Skyhawk, a plane so small and efficient that ground crews nicknamed it the Scooter. The Skyhawk's empty weight came in at just 4,400 kilograms, less than half that of some rivals, Its wings did not even need to fold to fit below deck, a first for a Navy attack jet. Every inch was a study in minimalism. No unnecessary systems, no wasted space, just a single Wright J65 turbojet, a stubby 27.5-foot fuselage, and a cockpit designed for one focused pilot. Heinemann's design brief was simple: simplicity, reliability, and ease of maintenance. That meant plug-in avionics, quick access panels, and a structure that could take a beating and keep flying. The Skyhawk could be serviced in tight quarters by a handful of sailors, turning around for another strike in minutes. This was not just good engineering, it was a revolution in how the Navy thought about fleet operations. The A4's small footprint freed up precious deck space, sped up launch cycles, and allowed more aircraft to crowd the carrier's parking spots, all without sacrificing punch. What did this little jet deliver? Up to 9,900 pounds of bombs, rockets, or fuel tanks, all from a plane that looked almost toy-like next to the giant Sky Warrior. And it was not just America that saw the genius. Exported to more than a dozen countries, the Skyhawk fought in the Falklands, the Middle East, and beyond. How often does a design this simple outlast its flashier, heavier peers? The Skyhawk proved that sometimes less really is more. Would you trust a jet this small to carry the fight? The Navy and history did so again and again. The Skyshark was supposed to be the next leap forward, a turboprop attack aircraft that could outrun piston planes but still land on a carrier deck. Douglas engineers put their faith in the Pratt and Whitney XT-57, a massive engine driving six-bladed, contra-rotating propellers. On paper, it promised nearly 5,500 horsepower and a top speed that would leave the Sky Raider behind. But the numbers hit a problem no wind tunnel could solve. As the test pilots pushed the throttle, the propeller tips edged into the transonic range, where air itself becomes unpredictable. Compressibility effects, those invisible walls of dense, turbulent air, set in. The result was not just noise, it was a violent vibration that shook the airframe from nose to tail. One test engineer described it as like flying through a hailstorm made of sledgehammers. At certain speeds, the prop tips hit shock waves, causing the entire plane to shudder. Instruments blurred, controls stiffened, and the aircraft's promised performance melted away. Engineers tried to tweak blade shapes and reduce revolutions per minute, but nothing tamed the resonance. The vibration was so severe that it threatened structural failure, especially during the critical moments of carrier landing and takeoff. The Navy's patience ran out in 1953. With only a handful of prototypes built and no solution in sight, the program was abruptly canceled. The Skyshark never entered squadron service. Its story became a warning. Do not bet the mission on an unproven power plant, especially when the physics of high-speed propellers are still a mystery. The gamble on turboprop technology left Douglas with a costly dead end, and the Navy turned its attention to pure jets. Would the Skyshark have worked if the engine had lived up to its promise? Or was the whole idea doomed from the start by the laws of aerodynamics? Sometimes the only way to find out is to build it and watch where the limits really lie. Night fell over Korea, but the fight did not pause for darkness. The Douglas F3D Sky Knight took flight when others stayed grounded, pairing a straight wing with a bulky nose packed full of radar gear. Unlike the sleek single-seat jets chasing speed records, the Sky Knight relied on two people, a pilot and a radar operator. On November 2nd, 1952, Marine Captain O.R. Davis and radar operator W.T. Little became the first Navy crew to down an enemy jet at night, intercepting a MiG-15, using only their instruments and teamwork. The Sky Knight's slow, steady handling let the radar operator guide the pilot through pitch-black skies, tracking targets invisible to the naked eye. Over Korea, F3D aircraft claimed 6 confirmed kills at night, more than any other Navy night fighter. What mattered was not speed, but the blend of human senses and early electronics. Would you rather trust a fast jet you cannot see in the dark, or a crew working together to make the unseen visible? Test pilot Larry Bauer once described the F4D Skyway's climb as like being shot out of a cannon. The Skyway was built for one urgent purpose: get above the fleet fast, before enemy bombers could reach the carriers. Powered by a single Pratt and Whitney J57 turbojet and shaped around a razor-edged delta wing, the Skyway could rocket from sea level to 50,000 feet in just 2 minutes and 36 seconds, a record in 1958. The secret was the Delta's massive lift at high angles of attack, letting pilots pull steep climbs without stalling. In a world where seconds could mean the difference between interception and disaster, would you bet everything on a jet that could outclimb the threat, or one that just kept pace? The Skyway's design pushed aerodynamic limits, trading comfort for pure, blistering ascent. The F5D Sky Lancer was Douglas's boldest attempt to outpace the jet age, but its promise was undone by the very physics it tried to conquer on the edge. Engineers stretched the delta wing, chasing ever higher speeds, until calculations revealed a problem no amount of optimism could ignore. At a projected weight of 12 tons, the slender wing faced bending moments that threatened to snap it in flight. One structural engineer described the dilemma as a race between speed and strength, with the stopwatch always ahead of the steel. Flight test data showed the wing flexed dangerously near its limits, forcing the Navy to halt the program before it could reach operational squadrons. Yet the effort wasn't wasted. The lessons learned, how thin wings respond to high-speed loads, how to predict and reinforce against catastrophic flex, became the backbone of later Navy fighters. Would you risk everything for a few more knots, or call it off before the breaking point? The Sky Lancer's story is a reminder that pushing boundaries is never free, but the knowledge gained can outlast even the most ambitious prototype. Innovation. In combat, aviation never stands still. As new threats and technologies reshape the skies, are today's designs as daring as those once forged on Douglas? Drawing boards? The choices made then shape the tactics and the risks of every mission now. Which future aircraft will leave a mark?